Hey everyone, Spazzy Dragon here, and I didn't think that I would have to make a video like this. Seriously. Well, as you can see, I'm currently at the office. I have some free time, but not enough free time to make a proper video, and to be quite fair, there's no server to make the video on right now. So, as you probably would have guessed by the video's title, this thing is about, like, my, quote, unhealthy fascination with zoners. I've had a few people actually come up to me on Skype and Teams me just ask, Spazzy, do you have a problem with zoners? Like, no, actually, they try to imply that I have some sort of problem with zoner players and that I hunt them down or something, like the amount of zoner material that I post on the forums. And this overall snarky attitude I have in, like every single zoner thread ever I have to post there, which is like snark, 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 snark. No, the thing is, I don't have a problem with zoners. I don't have a problem with zoner players, to be exact. What I do have is sort of dislike towards what the zoners have become over the years on Disco. And yeah, I sort of see the problem here is that Discovery, like freelancer, like vanilla freelancer, never really had a lot of lore for zoners, and quite frankly, all of the lore we got was in the form of like very crudely written rumors on bases, which a lot of people, when they first played through freelancer, didn't really read because, like, back then we didn't have stuff like engaging single player. And anyone who's going to just now try to say that, oh my god, Freelancer was a very good single... No, it wasn't. It wasn't a very good single experience. If you want a good single experience, just go play some of the Bioshock, Mass Effect, or other games. Seriously. If you're saying that Freelancer has a good single player, then you probably haven't played enough games. So, now that I've probably pissed off a lot of people, let's just get back to it. I don't hate zoner players. It's not even about the retardation about the zoner alliance or anything else. It's just how Discovery has morphed freelancers as well, but how Discovery has morphed the zoner ID into something that it just boggles my mind. It's like just one of those things that I don't really understand, and I don't want to understand because I have my own personal opinion on what a zoner does. And, people don't share this opinion, fair enough. I'm not going to force them down their throat, but I can voice it nonetheless, and I choose to voice it via funny GIFs. At least, for me, they're funny. It's the same attitude I have towards the whole civilian thing, like the term civilian. I think it shouldn't even be used in Freelancer, but, civilian. Everyone's using it, so obviously that's not going to go away. And it just so happens that it's pretty much the same thing with zoners. Now, back in the day, as kind of back in the day, you little kids don't understand back in the day. So yeah, back in '84 when I was starting to play, properly, I was branching out. I had a few characters. Zoners were I wouldn't say misused ID. I would just say that they weren't really anything other than being able to fly the biggest ship without any sort of zone of influence restrictions, because back then zoners could dock in house space and everywhere and everything. They didn't really have good ships. I wouldn't really say that the zoner battleship was a good thing, but then again, back in the day, I didn't fly any sort of caps, like any sort of caps. My first capital ship, the Talarica Light Cruiser, was actually somewhere in late '84, I think. Okay, so a bit of a just out of topic, but anyway, at least if I fought them, they didn't seem to be a big deal. Okay, so the idea is that apart from trading, zoners really weren't known for anything else. Like, okay, so they had a pretty detailed ship line, like more than some other factions could sport, but apart from that, they didn't really have anything else. The reason why I have this little dislike towards the zoners as a NPC faction is the fact that every single one player and their dog ended up treating this ID as a sort of a get out of interaction free card. I'm pretty sure that some of you even know that at some point the Zoner and later the Junker ID, for these same reasons by the way, had this little line added to them that carrying this ID does not exempt you from piracy. So you can imagine just how bad the whole situation was for the developer team to actually include a line like that, to remind people that no, just because you're neutral doesn't mean that, you know, you can't be pirated. And that was pretty much every single answer a Zoner could do. Like, even back then I was playing more on unlawful characters than unlawful ones, and every time I pirated Zoner, that was exactly what I was told. It's like, I'm neutral, you shouldn't pirate me, I bring supplies to insert closest free port to your base of operation here, and you wouldn't be able to survive without me. Yeah, I could survive without you, I just don't give a toss about you, so pay up. So you can see where this is going, right? It's the overall attitude you adopt as a Zoner, and to be fair, from my own personal experience, it's very hard not to adopt some sort of like gaming style when you're playing a certain ID or a certain ship. Like, if you're playing a cap, it's very hard not to think of yourself as a, you know, a bit more valuable asset to the Liberty whatever force if you're flying that thing. Same thing with a Zoner ID. It's actually very hard. You know that you are known for your tolerance and neutrality, and you're trying to be everyone's friend. But this, by the way, is the biggest flaw. This is my biggest gripe with the Zoners. Zoners aren't neutral. They physically can't be neutral. I mean, look at... Okay, I know that I'm going to piss a lot of people off by comparing Freelancer to real life, but quite frankly, we need to sometimes compare this just to, you know, for whatever we're trying to explain to make sense. Look at the, quote, completely neutral countries in real life. Okay, maybe this isn't a very good example, but let's just say that these countries tend not to be as developed as the ones who have pointy sticks. And I'm not saying just have pointy sticks, but are very willing to use those pointy sticks against anything that looks at them funny. Cough, Russia, cough. My problem with the Zoners is that they promote neutrality just because they have free ports. Okay, fair enough. You have free ports. You have all the rights to have ships to protect free ports, and you can be a complete little faggot and say that I'm neutral, you shouldn't touch me every time you get pirated. It's your choice. It doesn't mean that you are going to get your way, but yeah, fair enough, it's your choice. The problem that I do have with this is the fact that it's the sort of neutrality that you're trying to force down everyone's throat. For example, the reason why Zoners are such a big drama magnet is the fact that they're not trying to be neutral, they're trying to be everyone's friend, and there's a big difference in that. I know a lot of people will not agree with me on this, and a lot of people won't understand this, but being neutral is not interfering with anything. Like, let the guys who are fighting do it on their own. And there is no better example that comes into my mind right now than the drama that we had in Omicron Theta back in the day. It was pretty much like this. Omicron Theta has a free port, as you probably know. I can't remember it right now because I wasn't really playing a lot in that place. But the story goes that it was used as a staging ground for attacks on Crete. So it was like, Reavers, Outcasts, I think something it had to do with Mandalorian mercenaries back when they were still a thing. I don't know. Don't quote me on this. And at some point, the Zoners were like, hey, we're completely neutral, like, use our stuff. Hey, we haven't forgotten about you too, Corsairs. Here's some food. And yeah, that was a completely legitimate choice when the Corsairs just came up to him. Hey, faggots, thanks for the food and all, but you're not going to let these guys dock. That's it. And that was the only thing they needed to do in order to just stomp on the zoners, and just that it ended up to be a massive drama, up to the point that every single zoner was pretty much a kill on sight for the Corsair Empire and vice versa. Like, it was such a big mess, I can't even start explaining it. Okay, so that's one of the problems. The second problem that I very, very much have is someone saying that zoners are independent from house space. No. Some of the goods that you use on your cool-ass stations sort of come from house space. I mean, maybe not all of them, and I can agree up to a point that you might have some sort of way to, like, sustain your station. But sustaining a station is one thing, but catering to, you know, most of your population whim, like, no matter how small it is, would require just a bit more than some basic goods like food, oxygen, and whatever. I mean, if you're trying to make a sort of a away from home on the edge of Sirius, I think you really would like to do better than just eat some, like, bread and water, right? So yeah, that's just one of my gripes. In all, like, if you ask me what is a zoner, then judging from what I've read from the lore, I can only translate that zoners left house space because of all the bullshit they have, and okay, well, fair enough. But it more kind of places them in my eyes as some, you know, upper class people who decided to build a condo on some remote island. That is exactly what the zoners are doing in my eyes. They are making a small little paradise away from home and trying to interact with the other people, like with the commoners, as little as possible. And that brings me to my next statement. I agree that the zoners having capital ships sort of doesn't make sense, because here's the idea. As we all know, any sort of capital ship, apart from the very modern ones and, you know, all the bullshit we talk about, automatic turrets and AI and whatever, require a crew. And these crew need to be trained. And apparently, then obviously, all zoner caps are piloted by zoners. How many zoners are there? Like, if we look at the population of each free port, like, if we don't count the people who actually, you know, just dock there for whatever reason, just have a tea or whatever, there are not really that many zoners out there. And if we're sort of sticking to the idea that the zoners are pretty much like above average income people who just want to live away from the bullshit that house space provides, then yeah, it sort of makes sense that they would have some sort of defense. But would they actually spend time to teach their, like, provide military training to these people? If I was fat and lazy and I had a lot of money, I mean, I have the first 2 points down, but whatever, and I would go and buy myself a condo, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't take a 40-hour course on how to shoot things, although that would be awesome, and I probably would, but whatever. The point is, wouldn't zoners sort of rely on mercenaries or whatever? Like, what is cheaper, to provide resources to build, maintain, and train, well, build and maintain ships and train the crew and everything else, and not to mention they would probably lose a lot of money by, you know, paying their family if something went wrong? Or do you hire someone who already has the experience, B, the ship, and pretty much have to pay their, like, any food they eat and, you know, basic repairs on their ship? That's it. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I know that a lot of people don't agree with me with this, but, you know, that's just my opinion. Yours is yours. That's literally how I see the zoners. And again, my dislike towards the zoners is the fact that people are trying to play them as something bigger than they actually are. And I know this is completely hypocritical for me to say this, because I really tried to make the Liberty Rogues into much more than they are back in the day. But at least I admit it. I admit that I tried to make some sort of bullshit encounters, like bullshit ties with the LSF and the Lorrainland military and the BDM. Yes, it didn't make sense, obviously, but still, I mean, it sort of made sense. I have some sort of excuse for it, right? But the zoners, I think it's the ID. It's the freedom that the ID has. And I think in this case, the lack of lore attracts a lot of people with great potential. And I'm saying, yes, I'm saying that this is a very great potential. I like seeing where this goes. But Jesus Christ, just stick to the overall plan. The zoners aren't a house, and they will never be a house. But again, I'm just ranting. So yeah, that's actually the reason why I'm constantly making zoner references, when I'm constantly making zoner jokes. It's just because it's funny. It's amusing. I'm using these ironically because I know just how stupid this all makes the whole faction look. And by faction, I mean the NPC faction, not the actual factions. Although we have, you know, a lot of stupid ones as well. But, well, who am I to judge? Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. So no, I don't have anything against zoner players. I have my gripe with the faction itself and the ID it uses and how we portray this ID in game, and you know, if zoners had taken a bit of a different route when they started, you know, becoming a bit more popular on Discovery, if only they had taken a little bit different route, it would have been awesome. I wouldn't have any problem with this. But until zoners are you know, changed, and until that, and I'm just going to keep myself as anti-zoner as possible, so no offense. Spazzy out.